This story happened when I was 13. My parents raised me very strictly, despite the fact that I was a kind and decent child and studied well. For example, I had to be home at 5 in the evening every day, when my peers were having fun hanging out on the street at that time. I wasn't allowed to invite friends home, and I wasn't allowed to visit anyone. After school, I was immediately forced to do my homework. I didn't even have a computer. In my free time, my parents forced me to read books, which I later wrote a short summary about what I had read, so that they would make sure that I had read them. All this annoyed me very much. It was cruel and unfair to me, but what hurt me the most was that my parents didn't even feel sorry for me. I saw indifference and not a drop of compassion in their eyes. My mother was a cruel woman who always made me feel guilty for everything. My father knew only one emotion: rage. We never talked, he only came up to yell at me for bad grades or beat me up for disobedience. But enough about them, let's talk about my school psychologist. His name is Victor Stevenson. Each student could approach him to talk about problems of any nature. But to be honest, I've never seen any of the students talking to Dr. Stevenson. Every day I passed by his office on my way to the dining room and looked into his office through a small crack. He was always alone and working on some documents. I guess that many children were just afraid to talk about their problems with an unfamiliar adult. I was afraid too. For 2 weeks, I gathered the strength to go to him and voice my problems. During the lunch break, I stopped in front of his office door and, slightly opening it, looked in. He raised his head, smiled and waved, inviting me in. I went in. He greeted me, introduced himself and asked for my name. Dr. Stevenson had a very soft voice, which gave me comfort, and I could feel how he radiated kindness. I trusted him and told him all about how angry my parents were and how they didn't care a bit about me. The psychologist listened patiently to my story and nodded his head periodically. After a while, my voice trembled and I fell silent. I expected him to start talking about how everything I told him was not true, and my parents actually love me very much and blah blah blah. But it was different. Dr. Stevenson leaned over to me with a grin on his face and said, "You know, I'm the best school psychologist in the world. I promise that we will fix everything." I looked at him incredulously. "Okay, but how?" "I have ways," he said. "I am a man of my word. I promise that within 1 month the relationship between you and your parents will change for the better. Forever. But you have to make me one promise. You must promise me that you will come to this office tomorrow after school and that you will not tell anyone about our conversation today. This will be our secret." I promised. The next day, after school, I went to see Dr. Stevenson. After a warm greeting, I sat down in an armchair, and Dr. Stevenson lowered the blinds on all the windows. "Well, now we have the necessary privacy," he said with a smile on his face. We started talking about my hobbies and favorite things, about favorite subjects at school, unloved teachers, and the like. After an hour of discussion, Dr. Stevenson offered me a Coke. I gladly agreed, considering that my parents never allowed me to drink soda. Dr. Stevenson went to his refrigerator, fidgeted a little, and then put 2 Cokes on the table. We drank and discussed my life for a while, but then I passed out from something that Dr. Stevenson put in my drink. After waking up, it took me a minute or two to focus the blurry picture. And when I did, I was stunned.